Hello, this is Manos from Money, Whiskey and Coffee, and today I have with me...
Hi guys, it's Steve from Disruptive Wealth Creation.
So we're both in London today and we're going to be discussing how 2021 was in terms of investments, how the markets performed, and what our thoughts are about 2022.
Yes, so we start with the first question. How was 2021?
Yeah, sure. So,
Okay.
How was 2021 for your investments?
It was a bit of a rocky ride, and it wasn't just COVID and all the other things. The shares were a bit crazy as well, but fortunately I was up and I'm happy with that and I cannot complain. The best-selling share was Tesla. What was interesting for me was that the beginning of the year started with about sort of 20 shares, and by the end of the year I was only down to about 5.
Very good. So which are your 5 shares you're left with?
Well, the top one is Tesla, so that was one I made the most money on, and then I have 2 other shares which are mining shares, but they mine cryptocurrency, and that was Marathon Holdings and Hut 8. And then a company called Talon, which is all to do with mining lithium for electric vehicles. And lastly, I've got Xpeng, another electric vehicle company.
Very well.
And what about yourself, Manos? How was it for you?
Well, it was okay. I think my ETF holdings really performed really well. And in terms of shares, yeah, I had some that didn't perform very well, but I had some ones that performed really, really well. So I can't complain really.
Okay. Well, let me just briefly tell you about some of the shares that I actually purchased at the beginning of the year, and I thought were going to do really well, and I had to sell them. One of my biggest holdings which I sold was CRISPR Therapeutics.
Yeah.
This was one that was
Nora, I think, suggested.
Nora suggested it, and ARK Invest were crazy about it. And no doubt they probably will do well in maybe 4 or 5 years' time. But the reason why I sold them was, when you've got £5,000 sitting doing nothing, it just seems a shame. So the opportunity cost of cashing in and investing in other opportunities made sense for me.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And also, it really depends on what your investment horizon is. So, in my case, I didn't invest in CRISPR, even though it is a company that I would happily invest in. But I'm looking at a much bigger time horizon. So I don't mind having this amount of money sitting on a company that I am investing in it for the long run, like 10 years or something. My worst performing stock is Virgin Galactic at the moment.
Okay.
It's not doing very well. We'll see. It's not a big position, so that's fine. I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. If SpaceX IPO'd, would you invest in SpaceX, and would you even consider selling Virgin Galactic?
I wouldn't consider selling Virgin Galactic, even though it's not a big position. My idea is that your losses and your gains, obviously, are only real when you sell your position. So at this moment in time, I have something like 10 shares of Virgin Galactic, and I'm not exactly sure. And it's down 40%. Now, if I sell it now, I'm 40% down.
Sure.
But if I don't, it's just part of the journey. So if it recoups that loss and goes, let's say, 10% above my initial buying price, then I'm okay. Now, would I buy on an IPO? I tend not to buy IPOs.
Okay.
And the main reason is the way IPOs work. The big money investors get preferential prices, obviously, before. Then when the stock IPOs for us, the common folk, the investors that were in from the very beginning, they dump their shares to us. The stock price tanks. So I would wait, let's say, for a good month or two. and then I would consider entering. Obviously, this didn't happen with Rivian,
No.
as we saw.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was expecting Rivian to drop
Yeah.
when it IPO'd, but it went straight up.
Right.
Apparently, everything that has the name EV on it these days gets ridiculous valuations, even with
Well,
no revenues. So.
Okay, that's interesting. So, just moving on to a different topic, because there's been a lot of discussion about Chinese stocks and shares. And what's your feeling about sort of companies like Alibaba? I mean, are you investing in companies like that, or are you staying well clear of them?
I don't have any individual companies,
Right.
Chinese companies. I do have an ETF that invests in Chinese companies,
Yeah.
and that somehow mitigates my risk. I do think that they are really risky.
Yeah.
I don't think that they are bad companies per se, but I think that the approach of the Chinese government
Yeah.
is sometimes heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's always wrong.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of the political cost, let's say.
Yeah.
But they do take a heavy-handed approach sometimes, and they don't really care if that company loses money or not.
Right.
It's not like the UK government or the US government.
Sure.
So in order to mitigate risk, I chose an
Yeah.
ETF that invests in Chinese companies.
Okay. Well, I mean, you mentioned Nora from the Stock Explorer earlier on, and it's time to mention her again because one of the things that she discussed was Nio. And this was a company that she said was sitting there for a whole year, not doing very much, despite all the hype. And shortly after watching her video, I know she's not a financial advisor, but shortly after watching her video, I sold my Nio shares. But I'm still hanging on to Xpeng, and the reason I'm hanging on to them is because they're listed not just in China, but also in Hong Kong. So I think that sort of puts it, in a different sort of category in terms of safety.
So we are outside the London Stock Exchange, which is close to St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yes, it looks like a 1960s building. It's not very attractive, unfortunately, but as long as you make the money, who cares?
Exactly. Interesting about the London Stock Exchange.
Not much, really, to be honest with you. Maybe you could share some of your knowledge.
Well, I will share some of Wikipedia's knowledge that I'm looking up now off camera. Apparently, the total value of all companies trading on the London Stock Exchange is approximately 3.8 trillion pounds, which that would be about 4.5 trillion US dollars, roughly.
Possibly.
Rough estimates. So, Steve, we saw the London Stock Exchange. Are you invested in any UK stocks?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to that question is no. When I first started investing, I did used to have stocks, but then I found that the American market's got more choice and more volatility, and volatility is where you make your money. So at the moment, no stocks at all.
Well, I am invested in some UK companies. Obviously, Rio Tinto is one of them. I've discussed about it in our live with Kay.
Yeah.
I'm also invested in United Utilities, Polymetal, and some other smaller cap UK companies. Also, I do invest in a lot of UK-based REITs because they pay a very good dividend, actually.
I need to do something about this maybe next year because I'm with the Motley Fool and they give us some good tips and they charge a lot of money and I'm not getting any value from it.
So we're at Millennium Bridge after a short walk from the London Stock Exchange. Hopefully you can see the Shard in the background and the Tower Bridge. And Steve has a very interesting question.
Yeah, so my question is, what are your feelings about the stock market? Is there going to be a stock market crash or a correction?
Well, if I knew that, Steve, I wouldn't be here with you. If I knew when the correction or crash would come, I would be shorting companies, but nobody really knows that. The only thing I know is that there will be a correction. I think that some of the valuations that some of the companies have currently are unrealistic, and especially companies that are pre-revenue, like a lot of the EV companies. Lucid, for example, I'm not going to complain. It made a good profit with Lucid, but still has minimal revenue and it has a ridiculous valuation at the moment. I don't think this is sustainable in the long run. There will be some sort of correction. How big or small it's going to be, I don't know. What's your opinion?
Well, I kind of think that Rivian falls into that same category as well, but I wonder whether Tesla will buck the trend. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, compared to other EV companies, at least Tesla has a product that can sell, and they have the advantage of being one of the first companies in the EV space. There's brand recognition compared to other EV companies. However, their valuation suggests that they have something ridiculous like 110% of the total car market or something like that. I think it's due for a correction as well.
Yeah, I think what gives it the edge is the fact that because they're into things like SpaceX, they could get the technology from other sources, which obviously they're investing in and working towards as well. So I think that's a good thing. Right, so Manos, I've got a question for you, something that you may have some knowledge about, and that's 5G. So first of all, what are your thoughts about 5G? And secondly, has there been any major changes in the Internet of Things?
Well, that's not my area of expertise, but it's something that is of interest to me, and I'm lucky enough to have a friend who works in Germany, and he was part of the standardization of 5G protocols. The only thing I can say is that they're now working on 6G. So I think it's gonna be, I wouldn't say 5G is gonna be short-lived. I'm still on a 4G phone and I'm perfectly happy with it, but I think we will have new protocols coming to market sooner.
Okay.
When it comes to Internet of Things, I think it's not gonna be we're not going to wake up one day and say, oh, we're Internet of Things now. We do have Internet of Things devices in our lives and we don't know about it. We have our mobile phones is a good example. We have pretty much all the information we need on our mobile phones. The very exciting thing for me, and it's probably because of my job, is the industrial Internet of Things, where data that was usually collected by hand or even in an automated way had to be interpreted in isolation. Let's say a lot of times you would get results in weeks or days. With the industrial Internet of Things, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you can get results immediately, and industrial Internet of Things really will change the way we make products, and I'm really excited about it and what it will actually bring.
One of the things that I'm kind of excited about, and I think it's been shown in recent months, is how in terms of when we have research in medicine, how obviously you need to sort of provide so many sort of experiments, and this can be done in a shorter period of time simply by using technology.
Well, yes, indeed, but it's also has to do with funding and how much focus the research is. Take example, vaccines for polio or tuberculosis. They took a lot of time to develop and roll out, but vaccines for COVID, for example, they were rolled out almost immediately. I mean, it took a year, but in the grand scheme of things, that's almost immediately, and that's because a lot of funding went in there. Pretty much most of the scientific community that had to do something with vaccine development was actually working on it, and we got 4 or 5 different vaccines. We had some other research teams that didn't manage to get into a result. So that goes to show that if there is focus and actual effort and funding, yeah, you can actually get results.
Good, good.
So we touched about EVs before. Is there anything else you want to ask about?
Yeah,
EVs?
I'm just wondering about, not wanting to go back to Tesla again, but talk about sort of FSD and when are we going to get full self-driving? Do you see that happening this year, next year, or in the foreseeable future at all?
Well, it is going to happen, definitely. Right. Is it going to happen next year? I wouldn't hold my breath to that. I wouldn't bet money on that.
Okay.
It's a more complex problem than people may think.
Okay.
And I think it's a more complex problem than Elon Musk kind of makes it to be. I mean, he thinks it's a software problem.
Yeah.
It's also a hardware problem.
Right.
There was this big debacle, him saying LiDAR is a fool's errand. The thing with an autonomous system is similar to what you have on a plane, like an autopilot system. You have multiple sensors, you have redundancies in place.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you need to have on a car, essentially. You just don't need to be a bit better than a human. You need to be flawless.
Right.
Because then if you introduce a system that says, okay, it might crash sometimes.
Yeah.
There are ethical and legal issues coming along.
Okay.
If something happens and people die, who are you prosecuting then?
Sure.
Are you prosecuting the driver? Are you prosecuting the software developer?
Yeah.
Are you prosecuting the car company?
Yeah.
There are big questions there. I think it is going to happen.
Yeah.
Eventually, we will reach that point, but it's not going to happen in a year or two.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate that. Then let's move on to something else. COVID. Have there been any positive changes that have arisen out of the COVID situation?
Well, it really depends who you ask, I think. I mean, for me, during lockdown, obviously, it allowed me to sit down and have a good look at my finances and put them in order. I wasn't losing money hand over fist, but I'm at a far better financial point than I used to be. I think a lot of people are on the same boat.
Yeah.
However, there are people that were hit really hard and they still to recover, I guess. When it comes to companies, some companies went under, some of them unfairly, I would say. Some of them, they were due to go under, but this kind of accelerated the inevitable.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it kind of proved to the world that we couldn't take everything for granted, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, it's been interesting to see how sort of the mindset of people have changed. There was a time when you couldn't work from home, and now you can work from home. I think people, like you say, have taken a look at themselves. They've kind of, some of them are now sort of thinking, well, you know, it's okay working, but you know, there's other things that are more important in life, you know, lifestyle changes and things like that.
Yeah.
So lastly then, what about Bitcoin, and what's your thoughts about Bitcoin and about cryptocurrency? How do you see the future without?
Well, the thing about cryptocurrency, obviously I had a position, I kind of sold it away. I now have less than £200 in cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I see a lot of potential in the blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies in general. I don't think we've seen the final form of cryptocurrencies yet.
Yeah.
I think the space needs to clean up its act of bad actors. If not, regulators are going to come in and do it for them.
Yeah.
And we can see that happening already. In the US, they are going to be treating stablecoin companies as bank accounts now. So they will have a really high standard of regulation to adhere to and comply with. And in my opinion, Tether is one of the issues of crypto at this point in time, because they tend to print money like there's no tomorrow, and it's not really backed with anything apart from people's money, and which is the idea. But a lot of people take loans in order to do that. So this is kind of backed with nothing. Also, there is no proper audit for Tether or USDC. The only thing you have is ATA stations, which is like a snapshot in time. So you really don't know what's happening in the background. And that's a big, I wouldn't say red flag, but a big question mark for me.
Sure. And then what about, just quickly, what's your thoughts about El Salvador? Do you think they made a mistake, or do you think they've done a good thing?
I think they might have done a good thing. At the end of the day, they had the US dollar as a currency, which is not something they had complete control over. Anyway, how much is printed, how much it's valued, they had no control over that. Now they have Bitcoin, which again they have no control over it. So I don't think there's a big change. If you talk about a country that has its own currency, can make its own monetary policies, set up interest rates and all that via central bank, adopting crypto, that would be really, really interesting. It's an interesting experiment in of itself anyway. I'd be really interested to see how it works out. And I think it will give legitimacy to crypto. I think blockchain technology has a lot of potential. Not any particular at the moment probably, but in general for the future. And
okay, that's good. And looking into 2022 then, if you could only pick 3 stocks that you think might be flyers and might be winners, which would you choose?
Well, I honestly don't know. I kind of I had made the decision towards the end of the year to sell most of my winners, let's say, and especially the winners that in my eyes didn't make sense being winners. So I sold my Lucid stocks, even though I had them since they were a SPAC. So I made a good profit on that. I sold my Stratasys stocks, which is a 3D printing company, which made a ridiculous 100% gain at some point. And I sold it because it didn't make sense to me personally. I might be wrong, but if I had to choose 3 stocks, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing for next year. I think I have enough stocks that I can kind of keep track of them now. I have about 40 to 45 holdings.
Oh wow, okay.
Not including my ETFs, which are there forever. But I think what I'm going to be doing for the next year is just increasing my existing positions.
Got you. Okay. I think in my situation, I'm waiting for a few IPOs. I'm looking at SpaceX, possibly Neuralink, and also I'm sort of wondering about looking at sort of more sort of companies that are mining cryptocurrencies. So that's where I'm sort of looking towards. And that's just me. Thank you.